Welcome to Data Myths Podcast with your hosts, Brian and Malinda Gagnon.
So, a little about us. I'm interested in how tech helps us improve our lives. I have 20 years experience in digital communications. I'm an ex-Googler and now help launch new companies and products.
And I've spent 20 plus years evangelizing tech at some of the world's largest companies. Whether you're a dataphile or a dataphobe, we have something for you on this podcast. So get ready. Let's go. Hey, Malinda, how you doing this morning?
Hey, Brian. I'm doing great. How about you?
Feeling a little rusty. It's been 2 weeks since our last podcast because we did a little travel in there.
Yeah, and we weren't trying to miss a week. So we actually, this is the second time that we've recorded this podcast. So we did a wonderful live from South by podcast that we recorded 4 minutes of it.
Yeah, I apparently hit the wrong button, so it happens.
That's all right.
I was that person on the conference call on mute, Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I just gave my dissertation.
We were on mute for like 40 minutes.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about today?
So what we're talking about today is basically what we are thinking about when we meet new startups and what we look for in startups. So this is, on our mind because of just coming away from South by Southwest. The primary reason that we are interested in going there is because it is such a great place to see and meet great new startups. There's a lot of pitch competitions going on. So
I went for the barbecue. I don't really know what you're talking about.
That was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I did get a talking to because I came down with a cold while I was there. Bummer. And going into the barbecue joint, I was just like, oh, I don't know if I can handle this, but I got to do it because you can't walk away from Austin, Texas without having like awesome barbecue. And I'm like, can I just have some chicken? And the guy looks at me. He's like, where are you from? Like, Maine. You can't come all the way here and order chicken. I'm like, yeah, no, you're totally right. So
he said
put
it
me in my place.
He said it. I was thinking it, but I was like, no, you look great with the piece of chicken. Like, get the chicken.
So yeah, no, it was pretty awesome barbecue.
All right, well, let's dive in. I mean, let's talk all things startups today. So not totally data and technology, but it's definitely the birthplace, right? So.
Well, yeah, I mean, innovation doesn't happen unless you have new companies, new ideas happening. And, I think it totally is data and tech related because you can't have a great business today without having data and tech elements. I mean, even if you don't have a quote unquote tech company, you still need to use data and tech. So that's just the world we live in. So I don't think we can ever strip ourselves away from that. So if we think about South by and kind of how we go about sussing out, who we want to talk to. What I really like to do, for example, is read through the list of who's going to be there. And I always like to reach out to my favorites or what I think might be my favorites.
Yeah, so
you never know.
You do the work up front, kind of.
Yeah, I do. And I reach out and I get some meetings scheduled. And that lets me know, okay, I've got the kind of first tier done. Now, the rest of the experience is the serendipity. You show up to pitch competitions, you show up to startup networking events, and you just talk to people. And that's what's so fantastic about having a concentration of innovative, smart, go-getters like South by Southwest, because you just don't know who you're going to meet.
Right. And it was kind of fun too, because, just because we're married and obviously spend quite a bit of our business lives together now, we both had very diverging paths. So where you were out at some of these pitch competitions, I was at yet other pitch competitions. I don't do it necessarily how you do it, in that I kind of go to the pitch competition, flip through the booklet of all the different startups, and then kind of figure out, okay, cool, which one's interesting inside of that competition. So, we both had our methods and met some really great people along the way, which was fun.
Yeah. So when you're starting to pour through who's who, what catches your eye?
Things that catch my eye are companies that are actually solving a problem. And if I see AI, blockchain, machine learning, Tesla, Uber of things,
Airbnb.
got to get them in there too. I start to drone out a little bit because that, is a little overplayed. So I want to make sure that, okay, that's great. You're saying all those things, but let's let's wind it back a little bit and see what you're really trying to solve, and is it truly unique? What size is the market of that, and what's the competition look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
Traditional things, right?
Right. No, that totally makes sense. And, I also want to do a quick mention because we work with a great team at Uprise Partners who helps to produce this podcast every week and supports it. And Uprise is in the business of launching companies and products. Brian and I are co-founders of Uprise, and really it's all about helping a company or a team get into the market with something and really achieve fast growth. So whether that's helping to secure funding, finding that right match, coaching on how to operationalize and blow something out, and then going to market and reaching the target that you really need. So wanted to give that team a thanks.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you, team. So let's dig in maybe a little bit more too, right? So pitch competitions. So we've talked about sort of our methodology, how we find, where we want to go. What's the best pitch that you've seen, without naming names, but, can you give me an example of the one that you saw that was just awesome? And, what kung fu did they use to kind of excite you?
Yeah. So first off, a pitch competition is really like a professional sporting event. I find it's exciting. It's intense. The people who are presenting, it's like they're walking out on the field at the Super Bowl. I mean, it's really very exhilarating. So if anyone's just not familiar with this format, I highly encourage you to check out a pitch competition. And even if it's, you're not in the space, meaning you're not thinking of starting a business yourself, you're not thinking of investing, anything like that, it's just really amazing to see people perform under pressure, under a really tight timeline. So typically it's like a minute pitch, and, think on their toes with questions. And there's a lot at stake here. So people are just putting their heart into it. So it's really incredible.
So I think what we need to do, I'm sort of seeing a problem and a solution here that could be kind of unique. We need to match up esports with pitch competition. I could be like Pat Summerall up in the booth, and you can be down on the field side, like interviewing people. Maybe we're on to something.
I think that'd be great. No, but it's true, because if you interviewed the presenter, the startup founders, like before they go on stage, after they go on stage, yeah, I think it'd be awesome. I think after they walked out, they'd be like, I totally blanked. I meant to say this and that. It totally came out wrong. I can't believe it. Or, wow, that was the best pitch I ever gave. Or, I can't believe they asked me this question. I mean, it would be pretty cool.
I picture that like ABC Sports, the agony of defeat, and the guys like tumbling down the ski jump. Like that was, yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of great pitches, so you have a minute and you have to try to get people excited about your vision. One thing that you certainly want to do, and this is just like so basic, but it's so important, is clearly state your company name. And please, if you can, wear a t-shirt with your company name on it, because a lot of pitch competitions, if they're run well, they're going to have your company name, your Twitter handle, your email, something to help people reach you on a screen. But
so let me stop you there.
What?
Most of these pitch competitions, not most of them, but this seems to be like a podcast now. like where anybody is having a pitch competition.
Oh yeah, there's a whole business around pitch competitions, and that's another thing. I'm kind of digressing away from like the point that I was trying to make, but yes, there are tons of pitch competitions now, and you have to, as a startup founder and as a participant, take a look and see if it's actually worthwhile. Because sometimes the bar, I don't want to say is low, but it's lower for some pitch competitions. And we saw that at South by.
Yeah, I attended a couple at South by that were definitely lower tier.
Yeah, I mean, after going to, the South by promoted pitch competitions, Techstar pitch competitions, there were some run by other organizations that were still at South by, but run by other organizations. And they just weren't put together as well. The participants weren't as prepared, and it definitely was a different tier.
I felt like some of those guys just got a cue card saying, "This is your company that you're going to talk about," like as they were walking on stage.
It was they just weren't as prepared, and that's okay. We all have to start somewhere,
right?
Like that's okay.
Well, and you and I are used to going to things like Techstars, going to things like Mass Challenge or Y Combinator events where, there's demo days and pitches that are definitely at a different level than some of the stuff we saw at South by.
So to go back to like, how do you do a great 1 minute pitch? So just for goodness sake, when you have an amazing pitch, just make sure people can find you, right?
Right.
Say your company name. Wear a t-shirt, promote. And also, when you're mingling after the presentation, they can find you from your t-shirt. It's a beautiful thing. Just keep it straightforward. So, okay, saying the company name, wearing the t-shirt. Now, talk about why it makes a difference. If you have a personal story or some kind of personal story that can stick in my head, for example, I had a friend who had this type of accident, and what I've developed, my MedTech solution, fixes it. I saw it firsthand, the need and the impact. Doesn't have to be a long story, it can't. But that makes me realize and helps me remember, because it's impactful, it's emotional, why it matters, okay? So I know who you are, I know why it matters. Then tell me the opportunity. Tell me just high level how it could make some dollars and cents. Don't give me much for financial forecasts, because they're always wrong, and that's 100% okay.
100% of the time.
Yeah, they're always wrong. Don't waste your minute on that. Just give me the opportunity and tell me what you need to get there next. What's the next milestone? Because in the audience, I'm sitting there being like, if I like this, I want to know how I can help.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
And close by saying your company name slowly and clearly and talk to me afterwards.
So Malinda won a spelling bee at one point, apparently, because that's how she operates.
You got to close strong.
Say the word, spell the word, say the word, and walk off confidently.
There's a reason it works.
No, I agree. And so my take on that is a little bit different in that I really focus on the flow of the story, right? And I really want to see, here's the problem, the world problem today. This is the world view of the problem. Does the world know that there's a problem or not, right? Because that's important. And then here's how we're solving the problem. Here's how we are, going to market. Here are all the things that we've done to really address the problem and some of the business as usual today, and then you kind of get to, I don't even care about at a pitch competition. I don't really care about the dollars and cents. I care about how well spoken, is the founder. How well can they articulate it? Does the story matter? And does the story, flow? Because that stuff is what really matters to me in this day and age. The rest, you can figure out. That's what pivots are for if it's not quite right. But if that initial story and the initial person telling the story is really struggling, that startup's probably going to struggle.
So let's talk about the person.
Yeah.
when, so you say have a smooth story. So what is it about the person when you hear them talk that you start to be convinced that you could potentially get behind this person and be their cheerleader, cheer, investor, any of the above?
So, great question. What I usually look for is, just that they're confident in how they're talking about it and that they've practiced, right? We saw, or in a couple pitch competitions that I went to that I don't think you were at, there were many people that weren't practiced. It was clear, right? And this is an opportunity to reach out to your investors, customers, maybe people that champion you, right? So if you're not putting the time in, and you can tell, like, there's a difference between nervousness. It's like interviewing somebody, right?
Yeah.
When you interview somebody, you automatically think, okay, this person's in a situation where they're going to be nervous, right? Mm-hmm. So you factor that in. But if they're really nervous and, huge pit stains, and by the way, I saw a cool shirt the other day that makes pit stains go away. That's for a different.
That's good.
Yeah. But anyhow, and is just stumbling over every word, like, that's going to be a challenge because their low watermark is probably concerning at that point. So, when I'm looking at someone up there pitching, I'm looking like, okay, I know they're nervous because that's already the case, but are they able to not sound like a used car salesman, and talk about the story that is believable, right?
There was one pitch that comes to mind. It was during Mass Challenge, and one of the founders got up, and you and I were sitting pretty close to the front, and she was nailing it. She was just confident. She was delivering it really well. I mean, you could tell it was rehearsed and it was polished, but it didn't feel robotic. I mean, she was just like totally on point. And then she froze. And, being in the audience, I always, maybe it's also because I'm a yoga teacher, but I always, try to give people that good vibe, just like, no, we're here with you. Like, you can do it, And for some reason she looked over and we made eye contact, and I just kind of gave her that nod of like, you got this, And she started again, finished the pitch, and she actually came to me after the pitch and said, "Thank you so much. I saw you in the audience and it just made me comfortable." And I was so blown away because, I think that's just something of all just like, we're in this together in this whole like entrepreneurship thing of like helping each other. But that instance of nervousness, it's like, it happens to the best of us when you freeze. And she basically said to me, "Look, I'm just exhausted." She's like, "I've done this pitch a million times and I'm exhausted and I just froze." I'm like, "No, I totally get it. We've all been there. And that's why, we're all just like rooting for each other. And, but when that happens, it wasn't because she wasn't prepared,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, in terms of the confidence factor, I certainly, it's so interesting to draw that line between, as you just said, like the used car salesman, like, sham wow, look at this new thing. And it's like, you're going to flap the shelves and you got to have it kind of thing. Enthusiasm versus this true excitement and heart about what they're about to do. And I really think it's just, for anyone presenting, there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing. Like, you believe in it.
Right.
So it's there. Just express that.
So the other piece to this, right, is when I'm looking at pitches, I definitely get really interested in the founders, and I want to see as many of the founders as possible, because that really tells a pretty big story all to itself. And I'm a true believer in, you invest in founders because ideas change, right? I mean, it's awesome in this day and age to say that, you founded something and it's the same thing that you started with, 3 years or 5 years down the road after a couple seeds or a couple funding rounds. That's not the case anymore because there's a lot of people chasing, few good ideas, and pivots happen.
Well, and the landscape's changing so fast. I mean, we're in such a rapid growth economy when it comes to what technology is doing in terms of how it's changing the way we do business, opportunities for new ways of reaching consumers and developing new things. So yeah, pivot is probably just part of your course in starting a new company. So yeah, I mean, you need the people who have basically that combination of a vision, of just absolute grit when it comes to weathering the storm, hearing harsh feedback, being able to start again.
And that right there is why when I see a pitch and somebody is just tripping all over themselves and they look like it's fearful to them to do that, that's a huge caution flag for me. And the product has to be, and the idea has to be so much better at that point to overcome their pitch, their presentation, that really is a major red flag for me.
Yeah, and if there is a really fantastic idea and the pitch just comes off poorly, I've talked with some folks after the pitch and then have come to find out that, oh, my co-founder who usually does these pitches was sick today or had a scheduling conflict. And you find that you're talking actually to, the guy who's usually sitting by himself all day writing the code and developing the product, and he's not the front man. So, sometimes it's good to just have that little chat and see, why that is. But yeah, I think if you can't as a founder pull it together under pressure, then that's just something you have to do on a day-to-day basis, even when you're not in front of people.
Well, and I want to talk more about that, right? Because my dad always used to tell me, the whole adage of always treat the person at the front desk or the person cleaning the building like they might be the CEO, because they very well might be. In a startup, if you're in a startup and there's less than, let's say, 100 people at the startup, pretty much everybody at the startup should have a pretty good idea of what the pitch should be, what the elevator, conversation is. Whether it be the wallflower developer or the person, checking in the mail and guests at the front, every single person needs to know. And the closer you get to that boundary where everybody in your organization can speak fluently about what you do, that makes that whole excuse of, oh, well, the other person is the one that usually talks about it, right? This is your company. And if there's less than 100 people there, chances are you're really, really a critical person there. So you owe it to the company to really figure out the pitch and, put that at the top of your list. I mean, writing code is important, but writing and reading that story and being able to talk about it intelligently in your way is more important.
I think, yeah, that's a great point. And for anyone at a startup who that pitch doesn't come naturally for, spend some time with the people who are good at it and do it day in, day out and get it mapped out. Part of what every company needs to do, and it doesn't matter how small you are, how big you are, how long you've been around, to have those very clear pitch talking points mapped out. So have the one-liner, what do we do? Have the 10-second pitch. Have the 30-second pitch. Have the 3 points of why you're valuable that always come through in a conversation. And if you have those things, that's enough that if you happen to meet somebody who could really, change things for the company, someone who you want to have a follow-up conversation with, at least you don't miss that opportunity. At least you have enough to get their attention to say, hey, let me get you my card and, we'll follow up.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. I think that's great advice to someone new. What I would say too is like, let's shift gears a little bit, right? We've talked a lot about the people and the story. Let's talk about the tech a little bit. So in probably 70% of all of, and I'm just making that number up, but it feels about right. In 70% of all the different pitches that I saw at South by, as well as CES, and as well as probably just about everything in the last year, almost everything had, we're an AI company and we do blah, or we use deep machine learning to do X, Y, and Z, and that's like our product. Well, I think that was fine maybe 2 years ago, but now that has reached such a saturation point that digging in and getting a little deeper, and I hate to go back on my words. I think in episode 2, I got a little harsh on someone that was at an AI company and that was talking about, hey, you have to have a PhD, and how important and relevant your AI company is, really is relational to how many PhDs are at your company. Well, I don't believe in that, but I do believe in what is the floor, right? And today with TensorFlow, with a number of these other, Auto ML, et cetera, it's really, really easy to have, a machine learning strategy. It's also incredibly easy to have AI. I mean, companies like HubSpot or Salesforce or you name it are creating chatbots that are really easy to implement, that do a lot of AI to give answers, right? And so that bar is incredibly low. So if you are saying that, hey, we use AI to, answer questions or provide feedback or whatever, the bar on that stuff has just, really increased. And what I would say is a little bit of self-reflection. I started building a year ago a product that had a bunch of AI in it. And after looking at it for about 3 months, and I had other features and such, and the team was working on other pieces. But I looked at it one day and said, you know what? This bar is going to quickly become commoditized, and where I set the bar for some of our AI and machine learning routines, we need to move the bar way further ahead. So let's stop executing here, and we need to look further ahead. So, as a personal piece, I've been burned by this as well, where AI is moving and machine learning is moving so fast that you really need to understand like where that bar needs to be solving the problem.
Well, and it's just the distinction of if you're an AI company, you're an AI supplier versus an AI user.
Right.
So if you're a supplier, yeah, you need to, like you're saying, know where that bar is. But as any company right now, there's going to be some AI that you use. That's just where we are.
I understand it, but when you're pitching and the bulk of your conversation is about, we have some revolutionary AI technology that answers your questions.
Well, right. Did you build it? If you didn't build it, then that's really not something to hang your hat on.
And the majority of these companies haven't built it, right? So, and that's okay, but most everything is going to be automated in some fashion. And so if you don't have an AI strategy, AI is a strategy. It's not necessarily a whole company, unless if you're building something that doesn't exist today.
When we think about these phrases like AI strategy, data strategy, analytics strategy, so forth. So it's like having a strategy for a tool. It's a tool. So it really doesn't make a difference unless it's part of your growth strategy. So how does data, analytics, technology, AI fit into your growth strategy, right? It all works together. So while I certainly think it's valuable that there's so many conversations happening now around how businesses can use AI, that's great. But don't, I guess, don't misplace the excitement and the, okay, I checked that box with just having an AI strategy, because it needs to be much more holistic than that to actually do something for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and one of the things I would say as well is companies using the term, we're the Uber of accounting, or we're the Airbnb of, food services, or whatever. These companies are, they're barely public themselves. Actually, in the case of Uber, they're not, right? So they're still trying to get to a mile marker. And you're comparing yourself to a company that has quite a bit of a leap on you. And if you think that your definition of exactly what you are is the something of something, you probably need to think about a little bit better pitch, because I think it's important to differentiate yourself. If an investor or the audience says to themselves, hey, so you guys are like the Uber of something, you take that as a form of flattery, right? But to tell other people, hey, that's what it is, maybe you need to concentrate a little bit more on coming up with how you describe it, so that you don't have to use another company's name to describe what exactly you're doing and what you're changing.
So I have a little bit of a different take on that. So I agree in that, to just very plainly say we're the Uber of whatever our industry, or that could do you a disservice. So it just might be just so overly generalized that it kind of makes your audience gloss over, because they probably have heard that many times before. What I do think works really well, however, is in an investor presentation. I'm not talking 1 minute pitch here. I'm talking about an actual presentation with a VC, where you're talking, presenting to them in hopes of getting funding. That you start with relating what you do to known categories. Now, whether that's known business models that you can compare, like Tesla, we are employing, a Kickstarter type of fundraising. We've already done X, Y, and Z. That is perfectly fine. That's relating it to an example they understand. If you say, for example, because of the rise of the gig economy, that's a nod to Uber. Okay, great. So you start to say, here's how we're like categories that because as a VC or as any investor, you're trying to figure out, where do these people fit into my world? Where do they fit into my portfolio? Where do they fit into my goals and what I want to invest in next? So they're trying to put you in categories. They're trying to figure it out really fast.
Well, they're
right?
also trying to figure out, show me the money. Where's my 3 to 5x return? But
of course,
I'd really like 10 or 100.
So when you're first likening yourself to the known world, right? You do that, and then you say, and this is why we're totally different, and this is why we're blowing it up, because we see things very differently and we do things very differently. And that's when somebody has that moment where they say, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I get why, this is relevant,
Right. No, I really like the way that you frame that, because it's true. It's saying, yeah, we are all of those things. We've latched on to the gig economy, but wait, we see a problem with the gig economy. And so while we're just like Uber, we fixed a whole bunch of things and we saw problems that they had, and we solved those problems, and here's how we're doing it. Much different story.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you think of, the risk on all sides of this equation, when people call it the startup game and the VC game, it is because quite honestly, well, no, I guess maybe the odds are better with investing in a startup than in a casino. But it is kind of a game. I mean, there's a lot that goes to it where you can make good bets, but the percentage of startups that actually survive are really, really low. So, I mean, I have a few stats that I was just reading about the other day that over 15 years of looking back at companies who've been funded, 10% of angel-backed deals ever get VC funding. Of those, 60% fail to return the money raised. And of those that do return the money raised, 30% return the cash one time. And only 10% of portfolios make all the profit for VC funds.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, yeah, when someone's giving you money, they're taking a huge leap of faith on you.
Right. Well, and when you think back, I was sort of just getting into my career where I even knew about stocks and IPO and all that stuff, back in the late 90s. And the .com bomb. And I was reading that previous to the .com bomb, they were giving out prefs or liquidation preferences of 1x or whatever, meaning once they got up to the value they put in, then everything after that the company made for profit on their liquidation event. Well, after that, 2000, 2001, the prefs went up to 10x in many cases, right? So basically means they were, VCs were saying, hey, before you get $1, Mr. and Mrs. Founder, we're making 10. We're getting 10x on our money. And if we don't get 10x on our money, then you get nothing. If we get 9.9x on our money, you get nothing and we get 9.9x. So that's a risk factor, right? We're back down to normal ratios now where, some VCs out of the kindness of their hearts might give you a 1 or 2x. I've heard of 3s, kind of being at the top end, but I'm sure you could find higher as well. So not to go too far down the finance and the technical side, but
well, I mean, it's important though when you understand that, because then it helps to have that insight as to why you need to address the things that you do when you're looking for funding, what an angel investor or a VC is looking for, where they're coming from. It's all really important, and also why it takes a lot of networking and a lot of courting also to line up the right people, because it's not just a matter of getting the dollars in the door. This is it's an endorsement. Who you have on your list of investors, that's a vote of support. And that list matters to whoever else is going to come on board and to the next round.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. So shifting gears, like towards the end of a pitch, right? Or something like that. One of the things I like to see personally, and I get like a little leery about it, is when somebody's asking for and we're raising $2 million, and we would like people that are going to help us raise $2 million. I mean, that's great that you're asking, but in that minute time frame, that's a pretty short time period to be saying like, let's run down the third baseline together, right? Let's figure out how you invest in us. I think there's a lot more conversation, and in that 1 minute, specific to the 1 minute, there's probably better things that you could say, right? Which is, our next bit of growth or our next challenge or the things that we're solving for next would be scaling our product, coming up with 3 new features that further differentiate us from any competition whatsoever, growing into a sales force so that we can hit our sales goals and targets, adding more developers so that we can automate and be more efficient with our test routines, etc. Those types of things are actionable. A VC or someone interested in talking to you, is going to get that, and they will be able to do the math themselves. They're pretty smart. And later on, when you have more than a minute, you could talk all about all of the financing things that you need, right? I think it's just impactful to say, here are the things we're working on. If you're interested in working with us, please come find me later.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing that is really interesting to me when I start working with these new organizations and get to know these founders is, we talked about that heart of and that passion of, why they're putting so much at risk, right? I mean, this is a risky endeavor. Why they're willing to work so hard for so little money, if anything. They're probably in the red, actually, because they're putting their own money into this business. So, why does it mean so much to them? And also, how are they bringing that heart to the rest of the company? So whenever someone comes on board, they know that, and they know the why of why they're pushing so hard every day. And one of the events that we went to and supported and volunteered at South by Southwest was the 1% event. So basically, it's the pledge that we took with our startups, and love to share it. It's you pledge 1% of your profits, equity, time, and or product to charity. And this event was really fun because, we worked the door and helped get people in and helped new people sign up and just, spread the word about it. But it's really awesome to get that started early in your company, because it does help to solidify that culture. Not only like why we do it for us with our vision, we're also giving something back.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's always hard later to carve out, a percentage of equity or something like that to give to charity. And I do think it's really important. And when I was talking to the companies that came to the 1% event, it was interesting because I looked at those companies in a different light because they were making that commitment. They obviously took time out of their day to, attend that event and to help get other people in it. But I looked at it as culture is pretty tough to build these days because there's a lot of distraction with free snacks, beer cart, and all of that.
Which are great, by the way.
Yeah, no, I'm not knocking any of those things. I will say we went to a partner that had jars of Nutella the other day, and I was like, boy, that's pretty fancy. But anyhow, I think it really puts people up in my mind that they're investing in their community and externalities to their company that they really can't control, but they're doing their best to, give back. I think that's incredibly noble and awesome all to the same.
And I know that, when we share that with any new team member that we work with, it's always like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Yeah, I'm into it. So, it's just part of like what motivates people, which is just so incredibly critical, especially, in a kind of emerging, company kind of environment.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, we're getting pretty close to 45 here, so let's wrap it up. I know we're going to talk a lot more about some of these startup aspects and a startup in 2019 and what that looks like in the tech space. So, thank you. This is a great conversation. I'd love to talk more about this, but another time.
Thanks. Talk to you then. Thanks so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you have a question or an idea that would be great for us to include on the next episode, we would love to hear from you. Just send us an email at hello@datamist.com. You can also send us a note on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. And finally, want to give a big thanks to our sponsors, Infonomic Data and Uprise Partners. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll catch you next time.